if we wanted to. Okay, so that's just the button.
I let in this Brendan Enlon again. I guess so.
Here he is. Hey, Brendan.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and pause our streaming, but it does look like it is effectively streaming based on what I'm seeing here. Good morning, Denver. Alongside Council President Stacy Gilmore, Chief Financial Officer Brendan Hanlon, and the City and County of Denver, we want to welcome you to this community conversation on Denver's economic recovery. I'm Larry Schooler. As difficult as the pandemic has been and continues to be for so many of us, we're beginning to see the lights at the end of the tunnel. Denver is poised for a strong economic recovery on the heels of resources coming from both local, state, and federal governments. And today, we want to hear from you on what the city and county of Denver should be prioritizing as we chart a course for Denver's economic recovery. So if you're listening right now, be prepared because the focus is going to be on you. You are the star of today's show. Our panelists are here primarily to listen, to hear your feedback, and to offer some expertise where needed. But the star of the show today is you, the Denver community. There are a number of different ways for you to participate this morning, and we've got up on the screen several of those. But for those who are just listening on the phone, I'll give you some instructions. If you're interested in speaking and sharing a comment on air, we'd very much like that. You can press 0 on your touch-tone phone, that's 0, and you'll be placed with a call screener. Now, that person will take your name and information and then put you in a queue. And then once we get to the appropriate part of the conversation, we'll take your comment live on the air. So again, if you'd like to say something, particularly a comment, you can press 0 and you'll speak to one of our call screeners, and then we'll get you onto the air. You'll also be hearing a number of multiple choice poll questions that you can respond to over your touchtone phone. In addition, if you prefer to text or go online, you'll be able to text Denver 990 to the phone number 22333. That's Denver 990 to the phone number 22333. That'll enable you to respond to polls using your text message function on your phone. You can also watch us on risetogetherdenver.org. That's risetogetherdenver.org. So a number of different ways for you to participate by phone, by text message, and online in this important community conversation about Denver's local economy. And we're going to touch on a few different subjects, including community recovery, business recovery, and infrastructure investments over the course of our time together. So if you have comments or things you want to raise on any of those topics, or just in general about Denver's economic recovery, we appreciate it if you would press 0 and you'll speak to a screener and we'll get you right onto the air. To begin with, we just want to start with kind of a practice poll of sorts to find out a little bit more about who has joined us today. And so I'm going to read some answer choices to you. And for those of you on the phone, I'll give you the choices that you should choose from. And then for folks who want to text, those choices are live up on the screen for you right now. So the question is, what is your relationship to Denver? Which of the following? If you live here and not work here, you would press 1. If you work here, you would press 2. If you both live and work here, you would press 3. If you're more of a visitor to Denver, you would press 4. And if none of those apply and you're just interested in what's going on in Denver, you would press 5. What is your relationship to Denver? If you only live in Denver but don't work in Denver, you'd press 1. If you work in Denver and don't live in Denver, you'd press 2. If you live and work in Denver, you're going to want to press 3. If you're a visitor to the city, you're going to press 4. And if none of those apply to you and you're just interested in what's going on in the city, you're going to press 5. So it appears we've got a healthy number of folks who both live and work in the Denver area, as well as a number of residents as well. So we'll get some of those results populated on the screen here shortly. And as we are getting those results in, I want to say hello once again to our good friend and Chief Financial Officer for the City and County of Denver, Brendan Hanlon. Good to see you, sir, as always.
Good morning, Larry. Thanks for having us and hosting this morning. Really important conversation.
We're debating whether to do Officer Hanlon, Chief Hanlon. I'm going to go with Brendan right now, if that's okay.
Brendan is perfectly acceptable.
You and your team, of course, are responsible, I think, for us having this exciting conversation in the sense that you are tasked with helping figure out what to do with a lot of different potential sources of funding that can help with the local economic recovery. Can you just kind of set the stage for us in the context for why we're having this conversation?
Sure. Yeah, over the past few weeks now, we've been in the process of launching an economic recovery plan to build back better, sustain the recovery, and to do so in an equitable fashion. I think that's really important because there have been some communities in our city and nationally that have been disproportionately impacted by this pandemic. So that's why here in Denver, we're looking at at least a $700 million investment package. Those are really once in a generation type investments. And that's why we need the public's input, is to make sure we get this right and make sure that we hear from community, from businesses, council, other stakeholders in the city, to make sure that we make these investments in a sustainable fashion. When it comes to the $700 million, it's really paired with federal dollars in the American Rescue Plan Act of about $300 million through the Biden administration. Those dollars are going to be focused on business and community recovery. And then we're also proposing a $400 million bond issuance that would be comprised of city projects. And this process will also help inform what some of those projects are going to be. We have a 6-year plan. That's our starting point for any sort of public investment in our projects. But we need forums like this to really help inform what those projects should look like.
And having done public meetings like this for a long time, Brendan, I can tell you that, some folks may come to a meeting like this and just think, oh, they must have already figured it out. They've got their list, and I think you're here to prove them wrong, that this input really does matter to you.
That's absolutely right. And actually, I've received some of the opposite comments, which were, well, why aren't you just announcing what you're going to do and let people weigh in on it? We actually don't do it that way in Denver. What we do in Denver is we ask the public, our business community first, and then we formulate the plan, not the inverse. So that's why we're starting with this process. We, of course, have ideas. We have a 6-year plan that has projects on it, but we need the public input to really work on refining what that package should look like.
And as important as it is to you, I know it's as, if not more important, to Council President Stacy Gilmore, who joins us as well live. And Council President Gilmore, great to have you back.
Good morning. Thank you, Larry.
Tell us what you're really hoping to learn from the community as we get to comments and responses to our polls.
Well, throughout the pandemic, we really saw how neighborhoods were disproportionately impacted. And we thank everybody for coming together in ways that none of us really could have ever imagined. Our communities, we provided COVID testing sites, vaccination sites, food and resource access, youth safe zones. And I just want to thank the folks who are joining us this morning. Thank you for everything that you did in our Denver community, because you truly exemplify what true community looks like. And that's why in this next phase, our economic recovery phase, we hear from you. We want to know your ideas. We want to understand how you think we should do things maybe differently, as well, how we deploy resources, and especially those communities who were hardest hit by the pandemic.
Yeah, it's an interesting phenomenon, I guess. I mean, none of us want to think of the pandemic as being anything positive, but I know there's been a lot of talk of silver linings, and it appears that a community like Denver and other communities like it around the country have this sort of canvas now to paint sort of a whole new future for the city. That must excite you a little bit, and I'm sure be exciting to your constituents too.
It's like Brendan said, it's a once in a life opportunity, not only for our investment but also to reevaluate our systems and look at how we operate as a city. And, we in Denver have a lot of great things going for us. For example, we have our support team assisted response, our STAR program in the city that is specifically looking to assist those who are in a mental health crisis or need different resources other than maybe the police being deployed. And we can look at, what the infrastructure looks like in our communities. And for example, in the Montbello community, we, need better crosswalks and stop signs and those traffic slowing measures instead of maybe traffic enforcement. This is the time for us to really hear from the neighborhoods and the communities and reinvest these dollars so that we're making Denver as safe as possible. And last time we were on, we had a caller ask about, petty crimes in our city and what we can do about that. And this is our opportunity again to look at things differently. Petty crimes are many times an outcome of poverty. And so how can we reinvest in our neighborhood nonprofits to work with communities in a different way to mitigate those negative aspects.
I know we'll hear from you as we continue, and I welcome you to chime in anytime, Council President Gilmore, with your kind of reactions to what you're hearing. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of new information, but also stuff you've heard from constituents along the way. But most of all, thank you so much for being a part of our conversation today. And just in the space of policing and safety, we actually already have a comment from our Spanish line that I just wanted to share. This came from Rafael Diaz in Denver. He says, "I see that the police is not surveilling adequately. I feel a lack of respect for the police. I would like to see an investment in police training and services." So again, this program today is being simulcast in English, Spanish, Vietnamese, and Amharic. And in a moment, we'll have back up on the screen the phone numbers that you can call in and hear a live simulcast in any of those languages. And you can make a comment. It'll be rendered for us in English so that we can work it into the English language broadcast and make sure that folks who need that translation will get it and be able to incorporate it just the same. So the phone numbers are there up on the screen, and we'll have those displayed as we continue. We're going to go ahead and move to the first of our questions, which has to do with the community recovery. And we'll get that question up on the screen. And for callers, stand by. I'm going to ask you another poll question, so be prepared to choose one of the following options. So when it comes to community support, what is most important to you? So I'm going to read 5 choices, wait for them, and then choose the one that's most important of these 5. If it's childcare, press 1. If it's food access, press 2. If it's housing and support for people experiencing homelessness, press 3. If it's mental health, press 4. And if it's transportation, press 5. Again, when it comes to community support, what is most important to you? If it's childcare, please press 1. If it's food access, please press 2. If it's housing and support for people experiencing homelessness, please press 3. If it's mental health, please press 4. And if it's transportation, please press 5. So far, we're getting a tremendous amount of interest in housing and support for people experiencing homelessness. And as we're getting results in, I want to welcome back Don Mares. Don is the Executive Director of Denver Human Services. And Don, great to have you back.
Well, good morning, Larry. Good to be here.
I suspect that this pandemic has showed you things that you have never quite seen over the course of your long career. Are there one or two trends in the line of work that you have that kind of stand out to you in terms of just something that has really taken you aback in managing the pandemic?
Yeah, 2 things. One is when I started at Denver Human Services, going on 6 years ago, I was astounded at the number of people we were serving even then. It was 1 in 3 people in Denver. Fast forward to the pandemic, and oh my heavens, it's ballooned, and the people who need food is the one area where it feels to me I knew people needed food, but it's amazing the number of people who are either in food deserts or they personally can't afford it or whatever. It's been astounding to me.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because I think that we are so accustomed to thinking of food, clothing, and shelter as basic and just givens, and here we are in circumstances where millions of people have lost jobs, have been without ways to support themselves and their families, and those things are no longer as things we can take for granted, to say the least. Just want to touch upon homelessness because we have Julie joining us from Denver this morning, and she, I think, had a comment related to the homeless population. Julie, you're on the air.
Yes, I'm very concerned about the homeless population. I see it just getting bigger and bigger, and the cost of housing is so expensive. If someone even has just a Social Security check, they cannot afford $1,500, $1,700 for a 1-bedroom apartment. And I would really love this city to come up with much more creative ways, buying old hotels, more of that. Maybe renovating an old hospital that's going out of business and they're doing a new one, or the camps where they have the little small house on wheels, I guess, little tiny trailers, things like that we can get people off the streets. I hate seeing it every day, and my son is one of them.
Well, it breaks my heart to know that your son is struggling, Julie, and our hearts go out to you in that respect. But I know that I saw Don nodding his head as you were talking. And Don, what kinds of strategies is the city pursuing in that regard?
I'll talk about kind of a couple, but I think Brendan, who, if you want to know what's going on, follow the person who has the money, and he can talk about some of the very ideas you have that I think the city has pursued really with a vengeance. I guess I wanted to start by just saying, to quote a wonderful leader in our community, and that's Stacy Gilmore, who just said the words, "We need to think differently about our problems." That would really be helpful if we would think differently and do different solutions. So taking Stacy Gilmore's kind of charge, if you will, the city's been doing that. I know at Human Services we put together a team with 2 or 3 other agencies that try to go to these encampments and really work with people on what their issues are, whether it's mental health, whether it's food, whether it's whatever. And we've had successes in that. Obviously, it's a tough haul, but we've had successes. So from our point of view, we're doing some things differently. And perhaps, Brendan, if you wouldn't mind, there are in fact some initiatives underway to acquire properties and such that Brendan can probably speak to.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thanks, Don. So sheltering and affordable housing has been a challenge even before the pandemic. And I think it's just been exacerbated by the circumstances that we've been seeing. So we established, the city established an affordable housing fund a 3 years ago now. And our affordable housing investments are about $70 million per year as it stands. That was before the pandemic. Currently sheltering, both by way of the CARES funds as well as FEMA dollars. And I hate to get into acronyms, but those are federal dollars that we were leveraging during the pandemic, were one of our highest categories of investment during 2020. I think we are nearing $60 million worth of sheltering and look to procure facilities over the long term, as well as other sheltering options as well. So it is definitely a priority for us, and it's an element of the strategy and the feedback that we need from all of you as we move forward.
Folks with additional comments should please press 0 to speak to our screeners so that we can get you into this conversation. I'm going to pivot to a poll question that relates to housing needs, and then we're going to take some more callers that are standing by. But let's get that next question up on the screen. And here it is. For those listening on the phone, please wait till you hear all the choices and then pick the one that would be most helpful. So the question is, which housing solutions would be the most helpful to you and your family? Which of these solutions would be the most helpful to you and your family? If it's a wider variety of housing options in the neighborhood, press 1. If it's eviction prevention, press 2. If it's increased affordable housing, press 3. If it's mortgage assistance, press 4. Or if it's ongoing rental assistance, press 5. I'll read those again. Which housing solutions would be most helpful to you and your family? If it's a wider variety of housing options in the neighborhood, press 1. If it's eviction prevention, press 2. If it's increased affordable housing, press 3. If it's mortgage assistance, press 4. And if it's ongoing rental assistance, press 5. Increased affordable housing right now is trending a little bit high on the telephone responses. Don, it's such an interesting phenomenon, isn't it, that as a city continues to prosper and become more popular, it can become harder and harder for people to, scrape out the living they need to afford to live in the city.
Yeah, especially when the leadership in this city feels so strongly that having diverse communities in Denver, diverse ethnically, diverse income-wise, is what makes a city rich. What intrigues me about this particular question, this area, is sort of an observation, having been in government for quite a while in state and local levels, is if we are doing our job really, really well, people don't even realize it most of the time. In other words, the better we're doing, the less you hear about it. And housing is one of those areas where we are spending a lot of money on rental assistance, on mortgage assistance. We have a tax refund program where we can help people with their property taxes. And we're doing all these activities behind the scenes. TRUA program, which is just this has been amazing, rent relief. So there's a heck of a lot going on that is keeping people in their homes and helping them. And so that's important. It's also important that the city has, in fact, been working on programs to create affordable housing options, in trying to be creative too. And I know recently we've had conversations about what other cities are doing, what other states are doing, and what Denver might be able to learn and even make some policy changes. So there's a lot going on, Larry, and we all know we need to do more, and there's a lot more to accomplish, but thankfully we're getting after this issue.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. I think some people, those of us who have worked in city government now, are very accustomed to the city governments playing a role in directly helping people stay in their homes. I think for some people that's a watershed. Wow, I didn't realize that that's something that local government actually does. And so some of this is, I think, awareness building beyond anything else. Going to go back to the phones again. If you're listening right now to our conversation and you want to share a comment with us here on the air live, we'd really like that. So please press 0 and you'll speak to a screener, get put in our queue, and then stand by and we'll take you live on the air. If you're watching us on risetogetherndenver.org or on YouTube, you can see phone numbers up on the screen. And if you call into those numbers, you'll hear either this conversation in English or a simulcast in Spanish, Vietnamese, or Amharic. And you can make comments that we will try to get to through an interpreter into this broadcast, as we have earlier today. Janae Jenner, I may have said that wrong. Janae Jenner might be a better pronunciation, has been standing by. And Janae, if you're there, please go ahead.
Hello, thank you for having me. My question is basically, so Governor Jared Polis started this new Jumpstart grant program where he was giving around $1,600 to people who've been unemployment for a certain amount of time. And my question is, how do we, as Denver citizens, get access to those funds? I definitely think Jared Polis is a very good person, but I think that the decision to give those who are unemployed more money for an incentive to go back to work was not a good idea. And we're talking about people right now who are homeless and don't have a place to stay. So how do we, as Denver citizens, get access to those funds so that we can create programs, fund different organizations and nonprofits in our community to make it better?
Janae, I appreciate your question. And Don, I suspect that some of this will need some additional follow-up, given that there are multiple agencies involved. But what kind of guidance can you give, Janae?
Yeah, why don't we have the ability, I think, to get back to callers with specific answers to questions, number one. So maybe, Janae, look for somebody to get to you with a specific. We probably should post somewhere maybe a link to the states, because this is a state program, as you pointed out. Governor Polis and the state are putting this together. That would be good. And I'm just going to comment on what you said at the very end was you threw in the word nonprofits too, supporting nonprofits. There are wonderful efforts going on around the city to support nonprofits in targeted communities. And Denver Human Services just issued some grants, small grants to nonprofits in targeted communities, about 35 organizations up to $10,000. And the city is looking at that kind of a dynamic effort to try to help the folks that tend not to be able to even get in the door if you're a small nonprofit. It's beyond your support to be able to do that. So anyway, we're doing good things citywide around supporting those nonprofits. So thank you for mentioning it.
Yeah, and thanks, Don. I know that there are many grants also that are going to be made available through another city department. We'll try to cover that here in a little bit. But lots of different resources. Will Chan joining us this morning, I think, may have some additional information. Will, you want to chime in?
Yes, thank you so much for the question, Janae. We're also in DIDO, Economic Development and Opportunity, launching many grants as well so that we can help nonprofits, small community organizations, really to activate our neighborhoods and our communities. And so really letting you take charge of that funding as well. So whatever ideas you have, you can kind of activate that as well. So we have our own grant programs. So working across state and city partners to really figure out a way we can get through this together.
Thanks so much, both to Don and Will. And there appear to be a plethora of opportunities, a little bit of a buffet of sorts for grant seekers. And so I'm sure we will get someone to follow up directly with Janae sometime after we're done here to get some specific information. And we're going to go to a couple of other callers here shortly. Again, if you'd like to join us here live on the air, you just want to press 0 and speak to a screener if you're already listening to us on the phone. And if you're not, you can see the dial-in numbers at the bottom of your screen. Those dial-in numbers will allow you to join into the call and then be able to join us by phone. We're going to ask one more poll question in this segment with Don and community concerns, and then we're going to go to a couple of callers, starting with Bridget here in just a minute. We're going to ask this remaining community poll question, which is, which of these solutions would be most helpful to you and your family to access nutritious food? Which of these solutions would be most helpful to access nutritious food? So we're going to start with, there are going to be 5 choices here for those listening to me, 4 choices. So if you can listen to all 4 and then vote, that would be great. If it's more farmers markets or community gardens, a short walk from your house, press 1. If it's more food delivery programs, press 2. If it's more food sources that meet my special dietary or cultural needs, press 3. Or if it's more places that accept supplemental nutrition assistance programs, SNAP or food stamps, or women, infant, children, press 4. I'm going to read those choices again. Which of these solutions will be most helpful to you and your family to access nutritious food? If it's more farmers markets or community gardens close to the house, press 1 on your touchtone phone. If it's more food delivery programs, press 2. If it's more food sources that meet my special dietary or cultural needs and preferences, press 3. And if it's more places that accept food stamps or women, infant, children, SNAP or WIC, press 4. So far, the farmers markets and community gardens are getting the most traction, which is interesting. And this kind of goes back down to what we were talking about earlier, how in some ways astonishing it is that we in the United States, an economy like ours, we are still dealing with something as basic a need as food.
Yeah. Amen. I mean, that's so true and so impactful. We're doing a lot in the city in this space in responding to that burgeoning need, or maybe it's always been there and it's just coming to the top. It's really fascinating. But one of the things we do is we partner with the Botanic Gardens and with the hunger folks, and we actually set up places where people can get healthy food, including at Councilwoman Gilmore's and my building out in Montbello, the Ari Taylor building. It's pretty neat to be able to do that, but it feels very much like a bandage, I guess, that we really need to get a little deeper and figure out why. And in Councilwoman Gilmore's district, do we not have adequate access to food, healthy food? What do we do about that? And so we're working with nonprofits to try to pick up that slack and try to figure out how we might impact that issue more. But I guess I'll still put a plug in Colorado, and Colorado has one of the worst percentages of people who actually have signed up for SNAP benefits who are eligible. So they're perfectly eligible, but they just don't sign up. And I just want to continue to express to folks, we're there to help. Please come. It's your food and your taxes that are paying for this. Please come, and we will help you out however we can.
I think that's an important distinction, though, between sort of the one-off provision of food as compared to something that might be more permanent, like a market, a garden, something that's perhaps sustainable over a longer period of time. So we are seeing a good bit of traction for those farmers markets or community gardens here from the public this morning. Going to go actually to Greg from Montebello next with a comment related to food and food security. And Greg, you should be live on the air. Go ahead.
Yeah, like I was telling your screener, I've been here for many years. My key question is, here in Montbello, I live here in Montbello. It is very difficult. We don't have grocery stores here that is closed, like in Super or Safeway that is closed for the residents here. you have to travel about, go about 10 up to 6 or 7 miles one way just to buy, to get food and then come back. If you don't have car, that would be difficult. So it will be, it will be necessary if we can use the money that Biden gave, use it either to lower the King Supers or the Safeway company here in the midst of the residents, so that they can have easy access to get their groceries whenever they want.
Council,
so that's why that was my main question.
Yeah, no, we really appreciate you sharing that. Council President Gilmore, I think, wanted to chime in. Go ahead.
Well, thank you, Greg. And I'm a fellow Montbello resident. And so I really appreciate your question. And, this is where those investment dollars mean so much. And there's actually a lot of work that has been done in our neighborhood. We have a brand new Costco that is actually coming in at Pena and Green Valley Ranch Boulevard. But we know that that's also not a full service grocery store either. And so we have, and this harkens back to the earlier part of the conversation, how vital and important our nonprofit partners are, and how when we really invest in community in that way, we can do amazing things. And so there's a project called the Montbello Fresh Low Market that is coming to the front side of Montbello, and it's a consortium of different community groups, nonprofit providers, food access providers, along with affordable housing. And so that's exactly what we're talking about, are those transformational projects that will bring fresh food and access to our neighborhoods. And so we just encourage you to stay part of that conversation, knowing that food access is so important, and that we really take that suggestion and that feedback from you seriously, because that is something that we've been working on diligently across the city. But as you identified, there's much more that we need to do.
One thing that a city and county government are less impactful on is getting a grocery store to open. From the standpoint of one of the chains that Greg was mentioning, there's only so much that a government agency can do in that regard. But it sounds like there are other ways to provide food. We don't have to just wait for a grocery store to arrive of their own volition. We can look to other sources. Councilmember Gilmore, don't go far, because another Montebellan, I don't know if that's the right way to say it, is joining us now. So Bridget, who I had called on earlier, should still be with us. And Bridget, please go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was earlier I was talking about that I've lived over here for over 25 years. And even though I have seen a lot of improvement, it's kind of a little bit different when you go to other neighborhoods or you go outside, like I walk, and they say, "Where do you live?" I always proudly say I live in Montbello. And they're like, "Why?" I'm like, it's close to airports, it's like home to home. I love it. They're like, "Oh, over there it's not good, this and that." And I'm like, "Do you love your neighborhood?" And they said, "Yeah, it's okay." I'm like, whatever you love is what you love. Whatever you love is your home. So I will appreciate it if here, like when you go out, it feels good. When you're coming home, let us, make the street clean, put some trees, the crossroad, so that we know that we belong in the same community. Because Montbello is like different from all Denver neighborhood. And I'm here. Even though I work, if there's any way I can volunteer to help, I will, so that everybody will enjoy. I like fresh and good things, so other people will enjoy it too.
It's really so nice of you to share, Bridget, particularly that level of candor, around how people respond to your talking about your neighborhood and how you respond to being in your neighborhood. Council President Gilmore, I'm sure you have some perspective to add.
Well, thank you, Bridget, for your representation of our neighborhood. I mean, Montbello is my home. Montbello is where I've raised my 3 kids. And like my husband and I say, we're gonna die in Montbello if we are so blessed to do that. And so what you've identified is that decades of maybe systems in our government and different institutions where historically there maybe haven't been the investments. When you look at our neighborhood and maybe where we need more traffic signals, we need more traffic calming. We have worked hard to open up different areas for folks to get out and get active in the neighborhood. There's 2 new access points to the Rocky Mountain Arsenal National Wildlife Refuge in our neighborhood off of 56th Avenue. You can go see bison and bald eagles and get outdoors over there. And that's an investment that the city made with our federal partners to open up that access. And so where you need to stay involved and we need to keep that voice front and center, because there are systems in place that made that perception of our neighborhood maybe less than for a variety of different reasons, institutionalized racism, redlining, etc. And when we have representatives like you that speak so highly and represent our community in a different way, I just appreciate it and look forward to getting your ideas on how you would like us to invest this $700 million to make our community even better.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. First of all, I have to tell Council President Gilmore, the minute you said there's a Costco going in, I think my father-in-law bought his one-way plane ticket to Denver because he lives at Costco. So that's
and I have to say, Larry, we've also in the district gotten a Natural Grocers and a Sprouts Grocers that are coming too. And so we figured out, I think, that secret sauce in the far Northeast to attract those grocery stores.
And then as you were talking about the access to look at bison and so on, my 9 and 7-year-old were probably thinking, when do we get to go there, Daddy? Let's go. So you sold it well there. I know we've got our executive director of Denver Parks and Recreation, Happy Haynes, also joining us today. And I am definitely putting Happy a little bit on the spot. And so feel free to push back. But I understand that there's also been some investment in Green Valley Ranch, which is in the Montebello area. Is there anything you could share with Bridget and with the callers about that?
Thanks, Larry. Absolutely. Piggybacking on what Council President Gilmore said, and first of all, to the caller, such an important message. When people love their community, then they're willing to do what's necessary to make it a better place. And as you said, pick up trash, help, volunteer. And so really congratulations to you for representing the Montbello community so well. And the far Northeast, as Council President Gilmore said, is a place where we really are focusing more investment as a neighborhood, perhaps that has historically had less. We've focused a lot of our attention in Parks and Recreation to adding open spaces, working on the access to the arsenal, as she mentioned, the First Creek Trail. So we're on a mission to get more of our communities to have access outdoors within that 10-minute walk. So groceries and food access on one hand, but also access outdoors into nature and to our wonderful open spaces and parks where people can exercise, they can get peace of mind. These are all investments that are really tremendously important, and we focus a lot of attention in making sure that our residents in Montbello and in Green Valley Ranch and in Parkfield have that kind of access to these wonderful amenities.
understand also that there is several $1 million towards the Green Valley Ranch indoor pool that's considered in the Elevate Denver bond. And there's been a lot of art and culture, the district challenge by arts and venues in play there as well. So again, I'm getting ready to buy a house in Montebello after hearing this excitement. Only in the interest of making sure we get to everybody am I going to keep moving, but wonderful that Bridget, and other callers have stimulated this level of conversation. And I also have another caller from Green Valley Ranch, but I do want to spread things out a little bit. I'll get to that caller here in just a minute. There was a comment made by Lou, who is in Stapleton Central Park, and he likes the direction the city is going. He would like to see an opportunity for taxpayers to vote on whatever plans the city comes up with. Also, he would like to see beyond the federal funds where the city will come up with the money to see the plans realized. Brendan Hanlon, our Chief Financial Officer, is here. First of all, it would seem that the voters would likely have a say in bond funding for sure, but is there anything else you could share with Lou?
That's absolutely correct. All bond programs need to go to the ballot. And so voters will have the option of voting on the package that gets proposed here in the late summer after all of this community input has been provided. And then in terms of the long-term sustainability of our investments, that's absolutely a focus of all of us on this call, the mayor, council, everyone is trying to make sure that while these are one-time federal dollars, making sure that we have sustainability with these investments over the next decade, frankly. There are some things that will be one-time investments. There'll probably be other elements that might take multiple years to invest. Thankfully, the federal government gave us a 4-year spending window, so that has helped in terms of that conversation, but it is definitely in the front of the mind of the finance office to make sure that we spend these responsibly and sustainably.
Again, if you're just joining us, this is a community conversation on Denver's economic recovery alongside Council President Stacey Gilmore, Chief Financial Officer Brendan Hanlon, and a number of other city officials. I'm Larry Schooler. Happy to have you with us. If you're watching us on live stream, you'll be able to share your responses to polls via text and online. If you'd like to speak on the air, you can press 0 if you're already listening to us on the phone, or you'll be able to call into a toll-free number that we'll be putting up here on the screen again shortly. I know we have some other callers standing by, and so I'm going to try to get to them here in just a minute. We do want to ask another poll question to get a sense for who all has joined us today. So we're going to get that question here up on the screen. This is a question about our demographics and which of these would best describe you. So if you're listening on the phone, there are going to be 5 choices. And if you can listen through and then pick the one that best describes you, that'd be great. If you identify as Asian or Pacific Islander, you'll press 1. Black or African American, press 2. Hispanic or Latino, press 3. White or Caucasian, press 4. Or multiracial or biracial, press 5. Again, which of these best describes you? If it's Asian or Pacific Islander, press 1. Black or African American, press 2. Hispanic or Latino, press 3. White or Caucasian, press 4. And multiracial or biracial, press 5. So we do have a couple more callers that I want to get to before we pivot away from talking about community needs and talk more about business and the local economy. And so I believe Lonnie Rush is, excuse me, I might have said that wrong. It might be Laney. I'm so sorry if I've said
yes, that's correct.
Go ahead, you're on the air.
Thank you for your time this morning. So I would love to see Denver. We talked about doing something more creative with this money, right? Like, how can we find new solutions to our growing homeless population, how expensive it is, that kind of thing. I would love, I know that this is currently happening in like a pilot program to do like a universal basic income for folks experiencing homelessness. I love services. I love that there's the ability to connect with lots of different things that the city offers. But the reality is that poor folks need money to solve their problems when your problem is that you don't have enough money. So I would love to see Denver think about how maybe we can use some of these federal dollars to just give as no strings attached financial incentives to folks who, you know, when we give poor folks' money, they spend that money in our local economy, right? If you have to choose between your student loan debt and going out to a restaurant, you pay your debt. And then that money doesn't go into a restaurant. It doesn't come back to the workers and to local businesses. So that's kind of what I wanted to chat about today of, wouldn't it be neat if we could figure out a way to do that in a sustainable fashion? And then hopefully we lift the folks at the bottom out of, homelessness, out of poverty, out of all of that stuff, especially families, like people with kids. We want to make sure that poor kids aren't suffering because their parents are being affected by the pandemic, that kind of, or their parents' industries are being affected by the pandemic. I think that would be really neat. It would be really pioneering and really different. And I think there's enough smart people in Denver to figure out how to make it work. And yeah, I think that would just be really cool.
Thank you very much for that, Lonnie. And Don, I have to believe that the level of interest this gained on the presidential campaign trail, particularly from candidate Andrew Yang, I believe, I'm sure you've heard this kind of input more than once.
Yes, it's sort of a little bit of the buzz around the work that we do nationwide. And there are some cities that have taken more positive steps in that direction. And so we're looking at sort of what have been the results, because I think Lainey makes some really good points. At this point, we are studying it. I'd say in our department, we haven't even taken it beyond that, but certainly the whole point of this session is to take people's votes, if you will, on where they would like us to spend the money. And I think we will certainly say duly noted, Lainey. I think that's a suggestion that we'll keep talking about.
My understanding is that there is a nonprofit organization called the Denver Basic Income Project, which recently launched and is designed to provide direct cash payments to people experiencing homelessness. So they're in a pilot phase. Again, that's an independent program from what I understand, but it sounds like Denver is participating in some way. So it sounds like Lonnie's idea is getting some traction, and that Don's department will continue to look at it. Don, don't go too far. I do have another. You're the man of the day today. We've got a lot of community comments. For those who are interested in commenting also about local economy and business needs, as well as infrastructure needs, I want to encourage you to press 0 and speak to one of our screeners. We'll get your comments here in the next couple of segments. We don't want Will Chan from our Department of Economic Development and Opportunity or Happy Haynes from Parks and Recreation to feel left out. But Maddie from Green Valley Ranch is on the line. Maddie, if you're there, please go ahead.
Hello. I would like to see some of the stimulus money used to establish safe facilities for the mentally ill to get them off the street. And I'll stop using prisons to house them. This would really help in 2 ways, because if you have safe environment for the mentally ill, then they won't be wandering around on the street, and they will not be interacting with the police, knowing that this can go south quick, fast, and in a hurry. So, and a large percent of the homeless population is mentally ill. A lot of them suffer from PTSD, all types of trauma. So I want to see some of that stimulus money be used to help the mentally ill and establish safe environments for them.
We really appreciate that comment, Maddie. Don, I just have to remark how nice it is that we are getting such specific suggestions. It's not just generally help the homeless or generally get food on people's plates. But any thoughts just quickly before we pivot to comments on the local economy?
Well, first of all, Maddie is quite knowledgeable about this issue, because she's spot on that a lot of the folks who are finding themselves unhoused are suffering from behavioral health issues, whether it's mental health or drug addiction or something. So spot on. And even though there, was recently passed a tax for general mental health in Denver, and there's a separate nonprofit that's working on that. And even though there's been some monies that the voters passed to help homeless, not just building the funds, but to support some of these kind of efforts, I think hearing community continue to talk about that gives us some signal about where people would like us to focus some of the attention here. So, Maddie, thank you so much for raising that and putting it on the table.
I understand also that Denver just recently opened a solution center to support people having an acute behavioral health crisis who also are dealing with the challenges of homelessness. It's hard to imagine dealing with one of those, let alone both at the same time. And then there's also been investment, which quite honestly has made national news in the co-responder program that pairs police with mental health professionals, so that if the police encounter that kind of circumstance, they're not having to go it alone, but can rely on some of that expertise. And Don, I know that's part of your professional background as well. So I'm sure it's something that you think about quite a bit. And Don, it's great to have you. I'm sure we'll have something else for you later in the broadcast. But Don Mares from Denver Human Services, thanks for being with us. And as we pivot to the local economy, I want to welcome in Will Chan. And Will, let's see, I've got to get Will's title right because I can eat a sandwich by the time I finish this title. Director of External Partnerships for Denver Economic Development and Opportunity. Will, did I get it all correct?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, great to have you. And we're going to get a poll question up for folks to tell us about their priorities for Denver's economy. So when it comes to Denver's economy, what is most important to you to support an equitable, sustainable recovery? And so for listeners on the phone, I'm going to read 5 choices and encourage you to listen to all 5 and then press the one that corresponds with your response. So when it comes to Denver's economy, what's most important? If it's job seeker and workforce development, press 1. If it's local business support, press 2. If it's community and neighborhood support, press 3. If it's public infrastructure and investment, press 4. Or if it's government regulations for Denver businesses, press 5. When it comes to Denver's economy, what's most important to support an equitable, sustainable recovery? If it's job seekers and workforce development, press 1. Local business support, press 2. Community and neighborhood support, press 3. Public infrastructure and investment, press 4. Or government regulations for Denver businesses, press 5. And we're seeing a lot of interest across the board there, a lot of potentially worthwhile solutions. Will, kind of what are you seeing as it relates to some of the categories of support that are being talked about here?
I think it's like a delicate ecosystem. These are all important aspects as we move forward in bringing Denver back to being one of the strongest economic leaders in the nation. But I think one of the biggest takeaways that's been mentioned throughout today and from this pandemic was that we saw an increase in the inequalities of income, wealth, opportunity, and health. And for us to move forward, we cannot have these remain unaddressed. And so if we want to strengthen our economy and have an economy that works for all, I think all of these categories that are brought up today, we just need help in understanding what are those priorities from Denver residents. We want to get people back to work. I think Lainey was a caller earlier talking about universal basic income, but it's also having people in good paying jobs and jobs that have a career path moving forward. We know local business is kind of the heart and soul of a neighborhood. And so they've been hit tremendously in the past year and struggling to survive. How can we bring more supports there? And then just getting people out and about, having a strong, vibrant community and neighborhood is important too for businesses, residents, people going out and spending those local dollars, right? And stimulating our local economy. So there's all of these things work hand in hand, much like everyone that's on this call, like we are all in this together and working collaboratively. So, you know, like if we want to pull on the levers of workforce, our local business and neighborhoods within the city, we just want to get back stronger than ever.
Funny, as I look at the choices up on the screen, I myself was a job seeker just 12 or so months ago based on a change in the economy, change in my circumstance. And I'm also insistent whenever I travel on eating at a local restaurant, shopping at local places, and certainly when it comes to neighborhoods, I mean, I want to be somewhere that I couldn't be anywhere else. So all of this really resonates with me. If you have a comment that you want to make that's relevant to this part of the conversation on the local economy and support for businesses, you'll want to press 0 if you're listening to us on the phone, or dial in to the numbers that are up on the screen, and you can make comments in English, Spanish, Vietnamese, or Amharic. Again, that's English, Spanish, Vietnamese, or Amharic. And we had a comment that I'm going to read, Will, maybe for you to respond to. We may not have the caller live on the air, but Maria from Southeast Denver says she's been hearing a lot of information, but nothing about seniors. She's a disadvantaged senior and would like to move into senior housing, but the cost is $6,000 per month, and that doesn't include food. What options are there for seniors in situations such as hers? This feels like a comment that you could be able to tackle, but also I'm sure that others, whether it be Don or others on the line, might also have some input on. But Will, anything you could share?
Yeah, I can start. I think there's a rental assistance program as well that Don can touch on. We have a myriad of services in workforce development. And so for special populations, such as our 50 plus populations, we do have targeted services in our workforce division that can provide those supports. Denver also has an office of aging that can help with those transitions and help with those wraparound services as well. And so happy to connect with Maria directly, but I think as we see the silver tsunami coming, our seniors are really important for our Denver economy. So thank you for that comment.
Yeah. And then let me, before I continue on that path, just get a couple of other questions out as it relates to support for the local economy, because we do want to make sure we get plenty of input on this front. So this is a question for those who might be seeking employment, but you can answer even if you yourself are not actively seeking. Maybe someone in your family is, or maybe you were at one time. So if you're seeking employment, what are some of the barriers that are preventing you from returning to work? So for callers, I've got about 5 choices here, and so wait to hear them and then choose the one that's most applicable to you. If it's there are no opportunities in my field, or I'm looking for work outside of my field of expertise, you'll want to press 1. If it's I don't want to return to my previous job because of the low pay, 2. If it's I don't have childcare and or elder care coverage, press 3. If it's not having reliable transportation, press 4. Or if it's lacking technology or internet access to work remotely or explore job opportunities, press 5. So once again, if you're seeking employment or know someone who is, what are some of the barriers? What's one of the most important barriers preventing you from returning to work? If it's no opportunities in my field or looking for work outside of my field, press 1. If it's not wanting to return to your previous job because of the low pay, 2. If it's not having childcare and or elder care coverage, 3. If it's not having reliable transportation, 4. Or if it's lacking technology or internet access to either work remotely or explore job opportunities, press 5. Can relate to sort of all of these, Will, in a way. I mean, the whole notion of struggling to find workers to fill positions, I know, is a huge topic of conversation in hospitality and in food and beverage. And I know that we're staying with our in-laws right now, partly to get a little bit of support on the childcare front. That's certainly a factor for a lot of folks.
Yeah, for sure, Larry. I think one of the things with the kind of bringing back people to the workforce is looking at these special populations too. Women coming back to the workforce, talking about the C-section, which I cannot say, but thinking about seniors, I think there's a lot of like specific needs that we can address, hopefully with these funds. Like you said, we're hearing from many industries that we're seeing issues within various industries of having a hard time rehiring and retaining staff. So we just want to hear more from the community about what individual barriers they're seeing for when they're returning to work. You see some of them listed here on this list, like childcare and transportation issues, but there are others like we just want to know so that we can better serve the community.
Sure. Absolutely. And just in regard to the previous caller that was asking about options for seniors, want to make that and other callers aware of Denver Connect at denvergov.org. You can call 311 or call them directly at 720-913-8453. Again, 720-913-8453. We have a caller relevant to this employment conversation, I believe. Kelly calling from downtown. You're on the air.
Hi. So I was just wondering if maybe more emphasis could be placed upon fostering connections with like local community colleges in the area so that people who are currently unemployed could maybe be incentivized by a government program to help fund a degree or a certificate in order for them to be able to gain the skills that they need or the degree or credentials to then, after graduating, to go get a job in the workforce. And so like I just more attention, I guess, on making those connections with institutions that are already there and are currently hurting with low enrollment due to the pandemic. It seems like a win-win for me. So I was wondering if anything is being looked into in regard to that.
It's a fascinating suggestion. Go ahead, Will.
No, it's a great suggestion. I think education is definitely one of those pieces where we're talking about economic mobility that is so sustainable. We have a lot of different pilots that are thinking about different ramp ways to getting people back to the workforce with various industries. So whether it's technology certification or even in our Denver Construction Careers program, where we're thinking about apprenticeship and on-the-job training for people in construction to get different certifications. We've also just partnered with the Colorado Restaurant Association to launch job boards to ramp up recruitment and tackle hiring challenges. But I think working better with our higher ed institution partners to add more credentials and certifications is a great recommendation.
Ken, if you're joining us by phone and want to make a comment, I want to encourage you to press 0, especially if you have comments related to economic and business related matters, as well as infrastructure. Those are the topics we're trying to focus on here in the home stretch of our broadcast today. But if you have other comments as well, we'll be happy to try to take them. Again, press 0 if you're listening to us on the phone, and you'll speak to a screener and we'll get you into the queue. We have a graphic up on the screen supplied by Will's division that documents the extent of the challenges related to unemployment. I know that these have been somewhat inequitable, that they've disproportionately impacted communities of color, but as you can see from the screen, fully 13.4% at the height of the pandemic were affected by unemployment. It's kind of hard to believe, Will, it's even that low, quite honestly. I feel like I've heard so many folks that have been struggling. We're going to put one more question up on the screen and to the callers in this segment before we pivot over to infrastructure and try to get to some more callers. And this is a question designed for business owners, but others who may have connections to businesses can answer as well. If you're a business owner, as you prepare to move toward opening at full capacity, what are the barriers to success that you are most concerned about? So if it's employee or customer health, you'd press 1. If it's household demands like a lack of child or elder care, you'd press 2. If it's the cost of a rent, a lease, or a mortgage for your space, press 3. If it's a lack of customer demand, press 4. Or if it's needing more employees, press 5. So if you own a business or if you're somehow connected to a business, what is the barrier to success you're most concerned about? Employee and customer health, press 1. Household demands like child or elder care, 2. The cost of your space, the rent, the lease, the mortgage, press 3. Lack of customer demand, press 4, or needing more employees, press 5. It's interesting on the employee and customer health because, of course, we are seeing more folks dine out. We're seeing more folks go shopping with the broader penetration of vaccinations, and some wear masks and some don't, and some businesses seem to insist on it and some don't. And so the level of compliance is widely variant, at least in my observation. So very interesting to see what we're hearing. Looks like cost of rent is certainly important, as is the need for more employees and that employee and customer health, as well as some of those household demands that we were talking about earlier. We are going to go to a caller, I believe. We are ready with a call from Leela from 5 Points, who had some comments. Leela, if you're there, please go ahead. You're on the air.
Yes, sir. This is Layla, and I'm on the platform of our wonderful city's mayor. We are all Denver. I live in the downtown 5 Points area, but I'm also public transit street supervisor. Public transit street supervisor, so I get to work all about the city and various areas of that Denver metro area. My concerns are I'm getting over the COVID-19, and prior to, I was supporting the drivers out of my division through the Colorado Feeding Kids and the We Don't Waste. So I have all the food, diapers, wipes, supplies, everything to get to my drivers. I was taking to the drivers, use it back to my division using the division's company service vehicle. And the reason why is because the drivers, during their work hours, it was conflicted with food pantries and food banks and so on. So by the time they got done with their shift, everything was closed and done. But when I got the virus, there was no one there to do that. So as a smaller business person, community volunteer, advocate, and so on. I would like to know what can be done to, like I said, supplying more people to do what I do. I work with also the District 4 Denver Police Department with these agencies, like a lot of feeding kids and the We Don't Waste. So everything is there, but nobody could get these resources.
First of all, Leela, the fact that you have come through COVID and sound so strong and well recovered is wonderful to hear. I'm sorry you had to go through this terrible disease, but I'm glad that you sound okay. And it's also remarkable that in addition to your full-time job, you're going to such lengths to help others with food needs. I think, Will, as she was talking at the end, I heard her mention We Don't Waste, this program with restaurants that take unused food and distribute it to people experiencing homelessness. But is there other resources maybe that Leela ought to know about?
Yeah, we have a whole Denver food vision that we, and it's not in my division, so I'm not going to speak much to it. But I think we have as Don mentioned earlier, the food infrastructure systems are being worked upon in the city and really trying to address it more. One of the big surprises from the pandemic. We in DITO work with a lot of nonprofits, and I think that was one of the pieces that they're doing such good work in the community, like We Don't Waste, focus points. There's a lot of groups that are providing food access, and I think with this funding, we can partner better with our nonprofit kind of organizations throughout the city to kind of address these specific needs that are being raised up.
And as we've said earlier, but just for Leela's benefit, we have a number of different resources, a number of different ways to follow up after this meeting. And so we will attempt to connect the right city and county folks to Leela just to give her some even more detailed information. And we will endeavor to do so. Again, if you are interested in talking on the air and giving us your feedback, we'd love to hear it. And press 0 if you're listening on the phone to do so, or call in to the toll-free number that corresponds to your first choice language. We have English, Spanish, Vietnamese, and Amharic available. And we'd love to take comments in any language, and we can try and render them in English here live during the program. Another caller coming in, and before I pivot to infrastructure in the time that we have left, I want to get to one other caller related to the economy. Barry in Central Denver. Barry, you're on the air.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for doing this forum. I think it's very beneficial for the community.
Sure.
I'd like to just mention that I think that jobs are the most important right now. We've got thousands of jobs, as was pointed out, in food and beverage and the hospitality industry. I think we need to use these windfall funds to shore up wages and benefits in those industries and give people, get them back to work because the jobs exist. Then with those monies, they'll have the funds for childcare, and then they'll have the base and the ability to seek affordable housing. I think jobs are the most important. I think you start with jobs.
Yeah, I think the food and beverage, hospitality, leisure, these were the sectors that we're really focused on. We know these were the hardest hit during the past year, and so definitely feel that and having us refocus on that. We're really partnering with a lot of our Colorado Restaurant Association, Eat Denver, various groups that are kind of point and center, front and center with these industries to kind of find solutions to bring people back to work. I'll offer our workforce service line for the listeners that are on the line that might be interested. So if you are interested in looking for a job, you can go to 720-337-WORK or 720-337-9675. But again, I think we're really trying to bring back all the lost jobs, trying to think about creative incentives as well. And so a lot of the things that you mentioned, we are working on. So thank you for the comments.
And Will, I don't want to lose you, but I do want to thank you as I try to pivot us over to infrastructure. And I was getting a note from a colleague that some of Will's comments about job creation certainly dovetail with plans for infrastructure investment, particularly the potential $400 million general obligation bond for public infrastructure, I'm told that for every 100 million spent on infrastructure, we create about 130 jobs, which is pretty remarkable. We're going to pivot to infrastructure, and let me get a question up for our callers and our participants to take with us. So we'll get that here up on the screen shortly. And actually, we want to first sort of ask a little bit of a closing question on the local economy and find out about people's circumstances. So the question is, how worried are you that you will be able to afford next month's expenses? How worried are you that you would be able to afford next month's expenses? If it's very worried, press 1. Somewhat worried, press 2. Neutral, press 3, or not worried at all, press 4. If you are very worried about affording next month's expenses, press 1. Somewhat worried, press 2. Neutral, press 3. Not worried at all, press 4. We're getting a healthy percentage of folks responding that they are still worried. I also want to correct something I said a little earlier, although Brendan may be ready to correct it as well, that it was a 130 jobs per $10 million in investment. That pesky extra zero gets me every time. But nevertheless, certainly beneficial to the general public and to those who are seeking jobs. So forgive me for that exponentially different assessment of job creation on the infrastructure front. Brendan, anything you wanted to add in that regard?
Nope, just jumping in to make sure that folks knew that job ratio was a lot higher, as that number is 1,300 folks for
Reminds me of was it Chevy Chase when he was doing Gerald Ford back on Saturday Night Live? It was my understanding there would be no math, so I should have prepared for the math on this program a little better.
No problem.
Anyway,
No
thanks
problem.
for clarifying that. Let's go to a question about infrastructure, and then we're going to try to get to our remaining callers. But we wanted to ask folks about infrastructure. So when it comes to citywide infrastructure, what is most important to you? And we've got 5 choices to go through here. When it comes to citywide infrastructure, which of the following is most important? If it's building safe and accessible streets, sidewalks, bike lanes, and transportation, press 1. If it's expanding and enhancing the parks and recreation system, press 2. If it's supporting water conservation and environmental resiliency, press 3. If it's improving community and cultural buildings like libraries, fire stations, venues, museums, press 4. And if it's improving spaces to serve people experiencing homelessness and promote public health, press 5. Once more, which of these is most important to you? Building safe and accessible streets, sidewalks, bike lanes, and transportation, press 1. Expanding and enhancing parks and recreation, press 2. Supporting water conservation and environmental resiliency, press 3. Improving community and cultural buildings like libraries, venues, museums, press 4. And improving spaces to serve people experiencing homelessness and promote public health, press 5. We are going to go to a call as we get the responses into this poll. This should be Jolene in Montebello. Jolene, if you're there, please go ahead. You're on the air. We are standing by for Jolene, and let me, while we're doing that, welcome Happy Haynes. Happy was with us here a little while ago, but is the executive director of Denver Parks and Recreation, and it's wonderful to have you today. Thanks for joining. Oops, I think that your microphone might be muted, so I could only see your lips move. There she is. Thank you.
That's at least once a day. Someone has to tell you that you're on mute, right?
We should have like one of those, scorecard type things. You hear that 4 times, you get a free Zoom call or something.
Yeah, exactly. Some Zoom lessons.
That's it. Let me, before I get to you, just take another citizen, because we have a relatively short amount of time.
Sure.
David from District 9 Union Station is on the line. David? David, are you there? David? Not sure if we've got David.
We do have David live. I can go ahead and read his question real quick here. He might have his phone on mute. So David is Union Station area asking, have there been any talks about renovating the RTD building or buying a hotel where unhoused people could stay?
Thanks very much to our call screener coordinator, Ian, for reading that question for David. Happy, anything you could share in that regard? I know you're generally in Parks and Recreation, but do you have any feedback there?
Sure. I'm in Parks and Recreation, but I notice all of these categories are capital infrastructure that are really critical to the city. They work together in terms of creating the quality of life that we all want to benefit from. I don't have a specific answer on that parcel. It's a very important one in the center of our city, and I know that Britta Fisher and her team at Host in our housing division are really looking creatively at lots of opportunities to create more housing and more affordable housing specifically. So we can sure get back to the caller on the specifics of his question, but just know that all of these opportunities to create more housing, to fix the infrastructure that supports the vitality of our communities is very important. I saw that there were lots of responses for our parks, our libraries, our facilities, and having safe and accessible facilities is really important to all of us. Today, our city owns or maintains $8 billion, that's with a B, $8 billion in public infrastructure that helps all of our communities. And with that list, there's over 200 projects that the community has helped us to identify and in recent years reaffirmed as being really critical to help maintain our quality of life. These are projects, and it's $4 billion list of projects, 200 of them that have been identified as priorities for our community that help keep our city safe, that help keep our city accessible and connected, so that the caller earlier that talked about the pride in her neighborhood, that this is true across our city. And what's important is that we've been talking a lot about workforce and jobs, and it was pointed out in the slide that investing in our infrastructure is also investing in our workforce. It's crucial to the health of our economy, and it does create jobs. And so we're really excited about the opportunities we have in front of us with some of these dollars and proposals to be able to build on our community's health, to support the infrastructure that improves the quality of life in our communities and helps support jobs. And when the pandemic struck, we saw 73% of Colorado jurisdictions defer or cancel projects in order to save money.
Sure.
So that's almost 7,000 jobs just went away overnight. So we are really excited about the opportunity to bring some of these infrastructure projects back online, restore some of the jobs, and really help to restore our economy. So whether it's from businesses that manufacture, construction sites, all of these benefit from that. And most importantly, at the end of the day, it's employees with steady paychecks.
Sure. I know Brendan wanted to chime in there. I just want to be cognizant that we've got about, I think it's 6 more callers and a couple more poll questions. So let me just get this next poll question started, Brendan, if you don't mind, and then I'll come to you. But this is another question we wanted to ask about infrastructure. Which of these do you think the city should prioritize as it relates to the kinds of projects? If it's the projects that offer the most jobs, including apprenticeships and job training opportunities, you'll want to press 1. If it's projects for Denver's tourism and hospitality industries, 2. If it's projects that offer the most opportunities for small minority and women-owned businesses, 3. And if it's projects that improve access to technology like computers and the internet, 4. Again, what do you think the city should prioritize in terms of types of projects? If it's projects that offer the most jobs, press 1. If it's projects that support Denver's tourism and hospitality industries, press 2. If it's projects that offer the most opportunities for small, minority, and women-owned businesses, press 3. And if it's projects that improve access to technology like computers and the internet, press 4. Not surprisingly, right after Happy talked so much about job creation, we're getting a lot of folks interested in projects that offer the most jobs. Brendan, go ahead, and then I'm going to get to some callers.
Sure, and I'll be brief. So I mentioned sheltering investments that we've made over 2020. I got some updated information from the previous question. $110 million in sheltering that we are spent in 2020 and through 2021. So it's a significant area of investment. We've also been working with the Denver Housing Authority. So this is something that the city cannot do on its own. We need partners. And most recently opened up 139 units on Quebec hotel that was converted. And that was a partnership through Denver Housing Authority as well. So those are the kind of opportunities we've been looking for and have been investing in. Thanks.
Jolene from Montebello is, I believe, standing by. Jolene, if you're there, please go ahead. You're on the air. Jolene, are you there? We may have lost Jolene. I'm going to move on to Maddie. Maddie is joining us from District 10, Cap Hill. Maddie, if you're there, please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Maddie Hughes, and I live in District 10. And I just wanted to say that I'm, glad to hear about the fight for, more equitable conditions in the city, and especially for the unhoused. But I moved here I moved here like 3 years ago, and I just wanted to say that despite whatever has been done since Mayor Hancock came into office for the homeless, I still see, quite a few people homeless on the streets. And a lot of us in the community have had to mobilize, and we do, like outreach with cooking and distribution of food. And while that's like a really positive and community building activity, I just don't think that it should be necessary. So I really wanted to just express that housing is a human right, and that, as far as like all these initiatives go with trying to make employment more accessible, it really is just housing is the solution. And so I wanted to ask, I actually just had a friend send me some photos of people being hired to put rocks on the sidewalks to push homeless elsewhere downtown. And, I know that those rocks cost money, and I don't know why that's, a helpful solution, except for some, ignorant and intolerant people complaining about it to the government. But it's inhumane to push people off the streets when they have nowhere else to go. We don't know what challenges they're facing, and housing is the only solution. So I just wanted to ask if the city money is being used to put those rocks down instead of, putting people in hotels. That's pretty much it.
Yeah,
but I also wanted to.
Yeah, Maddie, appreciate your question. I apologize very much that I'm stepping in. I just have, I think, 4 or 5 more callers in about 6 minutes to get to them. Don Mares from Denver Human Services joined us here. Don.
Well, a couple things. Thank God for people who are passionate about this issue, who hold us accountable around it. But the city has really housed a lot of people in the last 2 or 3 years since the mayor created the Housing Stability Department. And thanks to the tax that I mentioned earlier that the voters passed, I think there's going to be a lot more that come online. So we're attacking that issue as fast and as strategic as we can. I would just say, though, that we need to understand the complexity of the issue of the people who we're helping and trying to help, that they need the mental health services, they need the other kind of supports in order to be successful, even in housing. So these have to go hand in glove, and you know, keeping them safe and keeping the society, if you will, healthy as we're dealing with this has been really important to Mayor Hancock and to the city. So, but thanks for the passion. Thanks for keeping us, you know, thinking about it in the way you're talking about it, because it does, you know, keep us honest, if you will.
And Don, if I can add a very direct answer to the specific question about, is the city investing in those rocks? That is no. Those are individual property owner decisions, obviously. And I think I mentioned earlier, Britta Fisher, who heads our Housing Stability Office. We have dedicated funds to provide housing. And she approaches and has included Don and myself and a number of others in the city in a housing first strategy. So you're spot on in terms of you know, focusing on first things first, and that is the direction that Britta is leading in our efforts to try to address this issue.
Just before I turn to Will Chan from the Economic Development Department, I know that's not quite the right name, Will, sorry about that. I just want to get to one additional question that we wanted to make sure that the public was given a chance to answer on the infrastructure topic. So the question here, there are three choices. What do you think the city should prioritize? If you think it should be projects that build something new, press 1. If you think it's projects that improve something that already exists, press 2. Or if you think it's projects that fix something that is outdated, press 3. So if you think the city should prioritize projects that build something new, press 1 on your touchtone phone. If you think it should be projects that improve something that already exists, press 2. Or projects that fix something that is outdated, press 3. That was a striking statistic, Happy, that you shared a little while ago about so many deferred projects. I mean, I assume that was a combination of these types, you know, yes, new construction as well as improvements or fixes. So much work to be done for sure.
There is, Larry, and the good news is the answer to that question is really represented in our efforts to help jumpstart a slowed economy. We know that public investment and the use of general obligation bonds can really help us to restart our economy. And that's why we're preparing to ask voters soon to approve a $400 million RISE Denver general obligation bond. And combined with our federal American Rescue Plan Act funds and the Federal Jobs Act funds, they will help us to rebuild an inclusive and sustainable economy that does all of those things. A few new, it helps with some of those deferred maintenance projects and the deferred projects, and all of them are about creating good, sustainable jobs.
I was saying to someone the other day, I think as event planners, we need to come up with events other than groundbreakings and other than ribbon cuttings for those projects that improve something that already exists or fix something that's outdated. Because we figured out how to start the new projects with a bang, but we need something that, you know, I don't know what it is. Maybe a new sign up, you know, that gets
well, Larry, we celebrate our equally in my agency. We celebrate the fixes and the upgrades and the enhancements that occur with our communities, because those are equally important, as you mentioned.
Maybe we take a page from the sports playbook, and when a new park opens, or not a new park, a refurbished park, the kids can run through one of those big, you know, sheets or something that says Denver Parks and Recreation and get real excited. Just a thought. I obviously should keep my day job. We do have a couple of callers still that have been patiently waiting, so I want to cut to them here as we come up on our time. Sister Lydia is calling us from Southwest Denver. Sister Lydia, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. I thank all of you for your time and for seeking help from the citizens in areas that benefit the whole person, the body, the mind, and the spirit. So together we will rise. And I'm thinking on a project that already exists and needs to be upgraded at Loretto Heights College, the Center for Performing Arts. It was built in 1963 and very much valued by the community. This cultural venue has been missed. Many citizens from different parts of the city attended the meetings where West Side Investments has sought the thinking of all the citizens for almost 4 years. So a call for a return of the theater productions in the Southwest venue was voiced by many. And I want to speak to the benefit of the performing arts. They help society as a whole in self-knowledge and understanding. The performing arts build habits of mind that are essential to living well and weathering the adversities of life. They hone our creativity and intelligence, foster our compassion, and bring a higher understanding of humanity to our awareness. Hans Hofmann, an abstract expressionist, put it this way: the profound meaning of all arts is to keep the human spirit in a state of eternal youth in response to a world that is perpetually changing. The aim of all art is to counterbalance the banal weight of everyday life. We have talked about the need for mental health. So it must give us the constant aesthetic joy that we need. So thank you for listening. I appreciate it. And we will rise together. Thank you.
That's inspiring as a message, sister. And I don't know, Happy, I certainly have missed getting to go hear live music, go to plays, go visit art museums. I'm excited that that's upon us. And I know that Sister Lydia is not the only person that has called specifically about this project. And so I know that's something that you all are paying close attention to. Not to preempt you, but I just want to get to Rupert in Montebello, who had a question or a comment he wanted to make. Rupert, if you're there, you'll be our last call. Please go ahead.
Hi, how you doing? I went to East High School, Denver, Colorado, and my father and mother moved to Montebello back in '72. So they're the first ones. We were the first family that moved out here, and there've been a lot of changes. We've had an outstanding amount of individuals who are buying up houses in this area now. The investors are coming here and buying up everything. So the houses are very overpriced. My father paid $35,000 for this big house that we have when we first moved here, and now it's worth about $400,000, $500,000. So that's one of the things that I wanted to mention, that the housing market has gone crazy out here in Montebello.
Mm-hmm. And is there something specifically you'd like to see the city do to address that?
Well, I'd like to see some mortgage situations where we can afford housing. I know there's nothing the city can do because people are investing in the area, so they're raising the prices up.
Right, but I do know that from earlier in our conversation, we talked about mortgage assistance programs that the city supports. So that's a helpful suggestion. Just because we're low on time, is there anything else quickly that you wanted to mention for the city to consider?
Yes. I used to go to Cup Foods before they shut down. There was a Kroger Cup Foods in the area, and I think Cup Foods between Northfield and Montebello will be a perfect place to put a new place to buy groceries. Since we don't have a King Soopers or Safeway anymore, they both shut up. to shut down in the area.
Rupert, thank you so much. I'm sure Council President Gilmore has got to be proud of the showing here by Montbello, as is, I know, Don Mares. Happy, is there anything else you wanted to add to the comments that were just made?
No, thanks, Rupert. For Go Angels, Go Warriors. Thank you for your comments, and I think we can, listening to all of the speakers today, there are just some common themes about the basics, about good jobs, about communities that have access to whether it's grocery stores or, as Sister Lydia pointed out, some of the things that are just as essential to our well-being in the arts, which is also a huge part of our economy in Denver. And so there are a lot of opportunities, and we're certainly inviting you, all of you, to weigh in. We know that we'll be coming to you with some proposals on how to spend these dollars in some of the ways that you have mentioned today. And so I just wanted to point out quickly one resource for you to look at some of the projects directly and provide feedback, and that is www.risetogetherdenver.org. So you can see the list of some of the projects we've been thinking about, investing, creating more jobs, and please continue to stay involved and engaged as you have today. Thank you for joining us.
And Happy, it's great to have had you with us. And if it weren't for Parks and Recreation, I'm not sure why a city would exist. So we appreciate the work that you do as head of Denver Parks and Recreation. As she mentioned, risetogetherdenver.org is a great place to keep this conversation going. We will continue to solicit feedback via the website for the next little while, and we encourage folks to go on there to take additional surveys, provide additional feedback. You will also be able to get some feedback if you called us and spoke during the call today and had some specific concerns. We're going to do our best to get some follow-up to you. But we have reached the end of this program, and we've also reached the end of this series of programs we've been doing for Rise Together Denver. And so I want to thank a number of folks as we wrap up. Probably first and foremost, Kiki Turner from the Department of Finance, who has done an incredible job of positioning us all to have such fruitful conversations. And I dare say that all four of them have been just remarkably fruitful in terms of the comments from the public. And we've had great support from staff who have been well prepared, not just by Kiki, but by others from the other departments. I know that we've had support today from Rebecca Gillis and Leslie Leon and Julie Smith and Adriana Lopez, among others, who have been helping in the background. We've had directors Don Mares, along with Will Chan and Happy Haynes. We've had the Chief Financial Officer, Brendan Hanlon, with us. We had Council President Stacy Gilmore, and earlier on other programs had Mayor Hancock. From my team, we had Zach Barr and Sarah Franklin, along with Ian Cerveny and the team of screeners and interpreters in not just Spanish, but Vietnamese and Amharic. But most importantly, we want to thank you for being a part of this conversation, for making the city and county of Denver the incredible place it is to live, work, play, and visit, and for contributing your expertise and your input and your passion to making the city an even better place as we emerge from this nightmarish pandemic. So on behalf of the entire team at the City and County of Denver, this is Larry Schooler saying thank you so much for joining us and have a great day.